G'day and welcome to ReDriven. Now, you know what I love about the 370Z? It's just a sports car. It's not a practical hatchback that also has a 300 horsepower engine and all-wheel drive and drift mode, or some SUV that's been lowered and someone put a giant engine in it, making it both a compromised SUV and a pretty crap performance car. This thing, from the ground up, is just a sports car. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually any good. Like these, when they're new, actually when they're new, they're still a bit old because these have been around forever. This is still a current model, but these ones are used. When they're new, they're bloody lovely. So most of these, they're no longer new. They're mainly used in secondhand. So when they're used in secondhand, are they actually any good? Like what goes wrong with them? Can you use them every day? What do they cost to own and operate? And most importantly, should you buy one? Let's find out. Now, before we get deep into the 370Z, can I please ask you a favor? Can you hit those like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons? And hey, why not go and follow us on all the socials as well? Now, the 370Z has been with us since way back in 2009, and in that time, not a whole lot has changed. Like, there's been a few little tweaks and adjustments along the way, but fundamentally, it's been the same car the whole time. Like a 2009 370Z and a 2020 370Z, they're pretty much the same thing. The front-engined rear-wheel drive 370Z was, and still is, available as either a two-door coupe or a two-door convertible, and it's powered by a 3.7-litre naturally aspirated V6, either through a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed automatic transmission. Ugh, an automatic 370Z, ugh, it's gross. Anyway, in this video we will be focusing on the Australian variants of the 370Z, but if you're not from Australia, don't freak out, don't panic, because everything we're going to be going over should relate to 370Zs in your local market. Now, Nissan released the 370Z in what feels like thousands of different special editions, most of which were just like cosmetic changes. And look, in this video, we'd love to go into every graphic detail of every special edition, but that would just take far too long. But we have grabbed all that information and we've put it in our handy ReDriven cheat sheets. Our cheat sheets are invaluable as they provide a full breakdown of the car's model range, its common problems, what you need to look out for before handing over your hard-earned cash, how much of that cash you should be handing over, and so much more. Check it out at redriven.com or in the link below. So how does it look? Well, for me it looks like a muscular Japanese sports car, which is interesting because it was actually designed in the US by a Canadian. I love how like the body looks shrink wrapped around the mechanicals. I love the pumped arches. I love this upswept window treatment, which is a bit of a throwback to early Zs. I love the retro Z badging, and also there's some serious car porn here. Now, you have no idea how much this just affects me in a lovely way, but the fact that the gap between the caliper and the inside of the spoke of these beautiful raised wheels, the fact that that gap is so tiny, I love that. Also, look for gutter rash like this on these rims. Look, it's not a deal breaker by any means, but no gutter rash generally means a careful owner, and that's a good thing. Now, as far as wear and tear goes, we do know of reports of these where the paint can get a bit sketchy if they haven't been cared and looked after. On this particular one, the paint is absolutely flawless. It's fantastic. It could do with a little bit of a polish, that's easy, but wear and tear, top notch. Now, this is a performance car, so it's critical that you look for accident damage and, more importantly, dodgy repair work. Look at all the panel gaps all over the car. They should be consistent. Look at the paint between panels. Not only should it be consistent in color, but also in consistency. Make sure you pop the bonnet and get underneath and look for any signs of overspray. If it's had some dodgy repair work done, I'd be avoiding it. How's the interior? Well, look, it is starting to feel a little bit dated in here, especially in terms of the switchgear. Like, everything feels nice to use, but just visually, yeah, it's starting to feel a bit old. Seating wise, look, it might just be me, but I'm finding it hard to find that, that perfect seating position. The Recaros in the Nismo edition are just spectacular, and all the details on the Nismo edition are in our cheat sheets. But for me, yeah, it's like my bum and my spine just can't get perfect. It's not bad, just not spot on. Quick fun tip, when you adjust the steering column, all the gauge cluster moves as well. Very cool. Also, I love the 3 gauges across the top of the dash. It kind of pays homage back to earlier Z models. Although, I don't know how often I'm going to need to know my voltage, but it's there anyway. As far as wear and tear goes, everything still feels quite nice. Like all the squidgy bits are still quite squidgy and they're wearing really nicely. What is odd, but you've kind of got like squidge, nice squidge, even like an Alcantara kind of vibe here, but then this hard as a rock plastic center console. It's a bit weird. It's almost like people that wear like a suit to a wedding, but with some white Vans skate shoes. This is the lovely suit, white Vans. This doesn't match up, but it is wearing well. Hard plastic doesn't seem to go pear-shaped very quickly at all. Even the seats and the leather in general, wear and tear is excellent. The seats are wearing really nicely. Even the leather on the steering wheel. Like this has got a few Ks and many years on it, but it's not getting too shiny and glossy. It still feels quite nice. Really impressed. For a car that's available, like even in the $20,000 range or even low 30s, this is a super impressive interior for a car that affordable. Like it feels more expensive. Yes, it's getting old a little bit, but like this, yeah. If someone was like, oh yeah, this is a $50,000 car, you go, yeah, it feels kind of like a $50,000 car. For like 25 grand, bloody impressive. How's the tech? Well, it is aging. There was an update in 2011, but there's no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto even in the latest models. But there is a USB port and a 12-volt power outlet. But it does have Bluetooth connectivity, a USB input, sat-nav, a reversing camera, and a very, very nice sound system. Is it practical? Well, when you think sports car, you don't generally think practicality, but it's actually pretty cozy back here. There's a fair bit of space. It's good. And practicality in the main cabin area. Look, as far as sports cars go, it's actually not too bad. You've got door bins down here with a spot for a bottle, although it won't hold like a really large size water bottle. There's a little bit of storage here in the center console. There's a single cup holder, so you and your passenger are going to have to decide what you're both going to drink because sharing is caring. It's got a pretty small glove box. There are some storage compartments behind the back seat, and if you're willing to dislocate your shoulder, you can reach all the way into the boot. So what goes wrong with them? Well, I'm not a mechanic, I'm not qualified to answer that question, but Jim is.
The 370Z, the engines in these things have been around for ages in one form or another. The VQ37VHR engine has a very complex valve timing system. Time will tell if it's going to last, but overall these engines are really, really stout. Transmissions also, and diffs, the whole driveline, really solid, never a problem. But the biggest issue you might have with one of these cars is the previous owner. Has it had track days? Has it been drifted within an inch of its life? Has it had shitty mods? And also just make sure it's got a good service history. Overall, these things were designed as a sports car, and from front to back, they are super solid and very reliable.
Is it safe? Well, it's a rear-wheel drive sports car with this button. If you don't press that button, it's pretty safe. If you do press that button, it's immediately not so safe. Also, there are some reports on early 370Zs that the brake cooling isn't quite efficient enough, and brakes don't like excessive heat. But in terms of safety tech and features, here's a voiceover of me. The 370Z comes standard with multiple airbags, ABS, brake assist, traction control, and vehicle stability control. But in terms of having the absolute latest safety tech, no, not even in the new ones. So what's it like to drive? Well, look, negatives first. I'm going to be pretty picky because this is a sports car. It should be driver focused. But I'll be honest, there's not many negatives. The steering is just a little bit dull. Like in a sports car, being driver focused, you want beautifully nuanced steering with loads of feel. And in this, it's the tiniest bit dull. Look, it might be the tyres or it might just need a decent wheel alignment, but I have driven a bunch of newer versions of these and it feels like it's a common characteristic. Secondly, I wish the engine just had a bit more torque down low. Like, we'll get to the positives of the engine in a sec, but especially around town, I wish it was a bit more enthusiastic from lower in the rev range. Besides that, here's the positives, and there's loads of them. Even after this many years and thousands of kilometers, the suspension and handling are phenomenal, absolutely fantastic. Look, if you're doing track days, you might want to firm it up with some quality coilovers, but out on these country roads, just sublime, superb. Like, you can shift the weight of the car around through the corner, and even though it compresses on the outside through the corner, there's still a great amount of suspension travel. So if you hit a bump or like a ripple in the road, even when cornering hard, it just absorbs it all. The car never feels sketchy or like it's going to get out of control. It just feels composed and compliant all the time. The brakes are fantastic. There's loads of modulation through that middle pedal, and even after this many years, they still feel strong, secure, gives you heaps of confidence in the braking. Now that engine, it is so smooth, so refined, and when you give it a bootful, it sounds so good. And apart from how brilliant the engine sounds, even with a standard exhaust, there's no rattles or creaks in here. There's a bit of road noise when you're on the freeway, but like, this has got a few Ks on it. It gets driven kind of hard. It sounds as tight as a drum. Fantastic. Even vision out the back isn't too bad. There's a bit of a blind spot near that C-pillar, but straight out the back, it's not too bad. Look, it's not as warp speed fast as like a tuned Golf R or Mitsubishi Evo, but just the way the power delivers, it's so enjoyable. I love the shift action. Like, you've got to be a bit muscular with the actual shift, but it just suits the characteristic of the car. And look, it's been a while since I've driven a new one of these, but I don't remember the shifts being just so enjoyable, so notchy and mechanical. Look, overall, these are an absolute delight to drive. They've got their own character and charm. They've got the perfect amount of power for public roads, and even around town, they're just so enjoyable to drive. Look, if you're buying one of these, or even if you already own one, please don't ruin it with some cheap coilovers or dodgy modifications. If you have to tune it, please do it right. Pricing kicks off in the low $20,000 range for early model, high kilometre, shabby condition 370Zs, probably with some god-awful modifications bolted to them. And at the other end of the spectrum, you're looking in the low 50s for mint condition 2020 examples. Nismo models range from, say, 50 to 70 grand, depending on kilometres and condition. And something like this, excellent condition, good amount of kilometres, and completely standard, looking at high 20s to low 30s. Also, it seems like the 370Zs haven't been affected by this pricing spike in 90s and noughties JDM performance cars. So even at 30 grand, it's a bit of a bargain. Nissan have a claimed fuel usage of 10.5 litres per 100 Ks, which we actually matched, but purely on the freeway. Around town and when doing some performance driving, we're seeing figures closer to 13. Nissan offered a 3-year, 100,000 kilometre warranty, which actually changed to a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty on the 1st of April 2019, meaning a lot of late model 370Zs still have some factory support left on them. And servicing is recommended at every 6 months or 10,000 Ks. But if you're doing some serious performance driving or any track days, make sure you keep those fluids updated on a regular basis. So should you buy one? Well, look, loads of automotive journalists criticise these for just being old and well past their use by date, but for us, that just all adds to the charm. The fact that these have been around forever means that they've got an awesome fan base and a really, really good support network. And look, as long as it hasn't been modified badly or abused, they're bloody reliable, which is more than can be said for a lot of their European rivals. Look, there's nothing quite like a 370Z. It looks amazing. As long as you pack lightly, it's kind of practical. And from a driving experience point of view, for me, it sits somewhere between a Mustang and a GT86. So it's a massive yes. Yes, you should buy a 370Z. Thank you so much for watching. And hey, what did you think of the 370Z? Let us know in the comment section below. And hey, can you do us a favor and remember, hit those like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons. Go and follow us on all the socials. We'll see you next time. Different special edition in this video, but that would take hours. But we have grabbed, here we go. The fact that these things have been around nearly, shut up bird, shut up, a really, really good support network. And look, as long as it hasn't been modified badly and hasn't been abused, they're growing, they're f***ing showing great signs of reliability. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry, you can rest now.
The 370Z and the VQ37 VHR engine are a great...
And look, as long as it hasn't been modified badly and hasn't been abused, they're f*** you f***ing bastard. What's for the bloopers reel today?